I'm often shocked how advanced Brazil is, and even how more advanced Brazil is compared to my own country, Germany. Speaking another language, it opens a new culture and a new world for you to explore.
How did those two experiences compare? Learning Portuguese versus learning Spanish?
Portuguese is very similar to Spanish until it's not at all similar, until it has nothing to do with each other. Germany is generally a little bit quicker and everyone is a little bit more work focused, versus in Rio, there's definitely also a big beach focus. I can tell you that. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, I've never seen it anywhere.
Michy, good to meet you. I'm Jared.
Nice to meet you, Jared.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you, man. Last night I was watching your video that you made in Brazil, living with that indigenous tribe in, was it the Black River, I think?
Yeah.
It was so cool, man. That was like a full-fledged documentary. I really enjoyed it. I feel like your videos are underrated.
Well, thanks. I'm happy to hear that, mate. Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to chatting with you. You're in Germany now, right?
Yeah, I just arrived here basically yesterday.
Okay. Are you kind of back and forth a little bit between Brazil and Germany?
Yeah, at least the last couple of years, and I think this year it's still a little bit like back and forth, but I'm gonna like have my main home in Brazil, I think by the end of this year, kind of, yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Sounds like a fun lifestyle. Sounds adventurous.
It is not boring, I can tell you that. But I mean, you also seem like a person who comes around a lot, right?
I like to travel. I don't think I'm maybe as international as you are, but I definitely love traveling. I mean, that's a big reason that I started this podcast, right? I like talking to international people. I like talking to people who, you know, kind of push the boundaries and aren't afraid to embrace some culture shock and learn different languages. And anyway, I think we have a lot to get into, but if you don't mind, I'd like to take it back to the beginning, to your origin story, and hoping you can maybe tell me a little bit about where you're from originally.
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally from Bavaria, from Germany, and I'm from the countryside, like countryside. And I grew up in a little village like 1 hour away from Munich, right next to the German Alps, and it's very beautiful here. And yeah, this is where I'm from. I have 2 brothers, happy parents, and a big family.
So when you say it's like the countryside, how big are we talking? How big is the village?
Listen, here 8 houses, and my family lives in kind of 4 out of these 8.
Okay.
Again,
you have the monopoly.
Family.
Yeah,
exactly.
Your family has the monopoly in the town. Like when people say, oh, I'm from a small town, I always want to know how big it is, because everyone has a different definition of what small is, right? Like I grew up in a small town as well, but about 5,000 people. And so some people will say, like my girlfriend, for example, is from Colombia. She says, oh, I'm from this small town in Colombia. I go, okay, how big is it? 40,000 people. And I go, well, I mean, for the Canadian standard, that's a city. But yes, 8 houses. I'm with you. That's small. That's a village.
No, there's just forest and prairies and grassland and a lot of cows, sheep, and horses. That's basically all there is.
Okay. I mean, but you're not too far from the city. You said an hour from Munich?
Yeah, an hour from Munich, exactly. It's also very close to the Austrian border and then to the Italian border and also Switzerland. It's the very southern part of Germany.
Okay.
I drive half an hour and I'm in Austria. I drive basically 3 hours and I'm in Italy. And the same to Switzerland, and also France is kind of close.
So growing up, were those trips that you did frequently? Did you go to those other neighboring countries?
Not too much, to be honest. Rather a lot snowboarding and skiing in winter, because here's a lot of snow. Since it's so close to the Alps, it's also a little bit higher above the sea level where I grew up. And when we went on vacation, so when I grew up, my family didn't have like a lot of money, let's say, and so there was one holiday once a year for like 10 days, max 2 weeks, and it was always camping because it's more economic, and it's also like more the style of my family, I guess, of my parents. And we usually went to Italy or Croatia on a camping spot, and right next to the sea. So it was actually very beautiful. Bonfires every night and playing the guitar and hanging out.
That's really cool. And like the European experience of being able to drive to another country, I feel like is pretty unique. We're just like, yeah, let's go camping in Croatia. That's a little bit harder for us in North America. Like we're so far away from a lot of other places.
Yeah. So you're from the States.
I'm from Canada.
You're from Canada. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Yeah, makes sense.
So that's like our vacation spot. If you want to drive somewhere, you do it within Canada because it's huge, or sometimes you go down to the States, right? That would be the most common. We don't have as many options as you guys have. Like, I mean, how do you see international travel as a European then? Like, does it feel like it's not quite as big of a deal? Like, if you can drive there, for me, it feels like, oh, that's not so different. That's not so far away. But does it still feel like an international trip,
Not really, especially after the borders were basically, there were no borders anymore. And that was when I don't exactly remember or recall exactly when, but I remember when I was a child and I went on holidays, we still had to show our passports, and there was like a border control, right? Like a post. And nowadays it's not anymore like that. You can just cross entire Europe without showing your passport or your ID once. Sometimes you can even take a plane to like Italy or Spain or whatever, and you don't even need to show any identity card. You just board the plane and then you're in another country. And that makes it very seamless because there's no border anymore. And this is a very cool thing about the European Union and the Schengen, right? The Schengen space. So but I mean, yeah, you definitely notice it because I mean, if you if you take the car and you drive 5 hours or 4 hours or whatever, and then all of a sudden, for example, in Italy, a cappuccino costs like €1.50, and it's awesome, and the food is just amazing, and then you, of course, you do notice it, and you do notice that obviously that you're in another country, another culture, but it still kind of feels like your space. You know what I mean? Not so strong as, for example, as if you would travel to Brazil, in my case, which I often travel to, or maybe it's comparable between States and Canada because you speak the same language and you kind of maybe have the same culture to a certain extent at least. So that's maybe comparable with traveling a little bit in Europe as a European.
I guess especially if you were going to another, let's say, German-speaking country, like if you're going to Austria or Switzerland, then maybe it would be more like the U.S. and Canada because there wouldn't be that language barrier, right? Like if you went to Italy, it would still have that European vibe, but everyone's speaking Italian, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's of course a big deal, especially in Italy and Spain and France, who basically just love their own languages and don't speak anything else.
Right.
And yeah, there you notice it a lot. The Eastern European countries speak better English in my experience. And even though sometimes even German, because well, apparently German is the biggest economy here in Europe, and many people like to work here or also work in tourism, and then it helps you that you speak German because we Germans are also the biggest population here in Europe, and we of course make vacations everywhere. But what I also can say to that is that in Germany, if you wanna graduate from high school, in order to do that, you need to have a third language. So apart from obviously English, which is mandatory, you have to learn a third language, which usually is French, or also nowadays Italian and Spanish a lot. But usually you learn French, and so many people, many Germans basically speak French or kind of know their way around because of the high school. Yeah.
And do you feel like the education system is enough to really prepare you to use the language in practical scenarios, like when you graduate?
Yes, absolutely.
That's good. Yeah, that's a big difference because I feel like here, sometimes that isn't the case. Like we learn French as well in high school, and a lot of people don't speak it very well. A lot of English speakers don't speak it very well. And so, even like, I don't know, there are French immersion programs as well. And so maybe that's a little bit better, but yeah, it doesn't always, I don't think, prepare people for what they need in the real world, which is a shame.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It's also let's say the educational standard is unfortunately also in Germany decreasing. I see it when I look at my cousins who go to school, like 8th grade, 10th grade, whatever. I'm 30, so it's not that long ago that I went to school, and already in the last 10, 15 years, the standard definitely decreased a little bit, but still language-wise, I think Germany has high standards still compared to like most other countries, supposedly. Yeah. In this case, it's a good education system we have here.
And so then, at what point did you move from this small little village to South America? When did that happen?
Well, as a matter of fact, I was never really into traveling too much until I turned 20, and I was basically just around Germany. And however, when I was 14, I kind of had to leave my parents' home because, well, and sometimes you have a difficult time when you're a teenager and everything. So my parents basically told me, listen, you should go to France also in order to learn French and also to have you out of the house. And so I did that, and I lived there with a family for a few months, and I learned the language, and I also it was kind of easy for me for some reason. And there I kind of, for the first time, like felt how it is to be in a new culture, learn a new language, and be around different people, and experience that really like living there. And so it took away a little bit the fear of the unknown and everything. And then later on, just after I graduated from high school and everything, I was always drawn to South America. I don't know why, I don't know how, it just happened naturally. And also back then, my girlfriend was living in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. And I met her in Munich, however, and that kind of started my South America adventure, I would say. And since then, it just never stopped. Always when I had the chance to travel, I went to South America. And then Brazil came a little bit as a surprise, because it's the only country in South America which is not speaking Spanish, well, apart from the Guyanas, but let's put them apart. And man, because I speak fluently Spanish, and when I came to Brazil, for the first time, it was in 2015, and I didn't speak any Portuguese, and I was like, not so impressed. However, and then in 2020, I went the second time. No, actually in 2018, and then again in 2020, and so on. And then I was like, Jesus, I have to learn this language because I really like it here, and it's absolutely mandatory, of course, in South America that you speak a little bit of Spanish and a little bit of Portuguese, at least to come around, to move around, because English is definitely not. It's not possible.
Better Spanish than English in Brazil to communicate with people. If you have to, like,
obviously, the best is Portuguese. But if you cannot do Portuguese, then Spanish you will find your way around. Definitely, there are lots of Argentinians and Venezolanos and from other countries from South America. So Spanish works.
What was the first country in South America that you went to? Was it Argentina?
It was. Actually, before it was Nicaragua. Even before, it was 1 year before I went to Argentina was Nicaragua. But however, it's Central America, kind of. We can count it in, however. But
I guess we could say Latin America would be the more inclusive. First country in Latin America.
In Latin America, yeah, we can go with that. Yeah, it was Nicaragua. I spent there also about 6 weeks. but I was not. I was just too. I was not ready. Nicaragua was also. I mean, I suppose it's still kind of rough. And back then, it was my first international trip, and I didn't speak any word, and I was just. It was an overload, so I couldn't really enjoy it. But so let's say my first real experience in South America was Argentina, and I also stayed there for several months, and from there I went on different trips to Bolivia and Peru and then Uruguay as well, and yeah, did a backpacking tour and stuff.
Did you have
really
any
cool.
Spanish before you arrived?
No.
So you learned just kind of while traveling.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, no. So when I arrived in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, I took Spanish lessons, private Spanish lessons, for about 6 weeks with a private teacher, Isabella, best teacher, for I think 2 or 3 times a week for 2 hours or something like that.
Oh,
To
wow. Okay.
learn the basics, because I really wanted to learn quick, in order to like just participate, because no one speaks English apparently.
Yeah, that is something that immediately can become a hurdle in Latin America if you're an English speaker, or if you don't speak Spanish or Portuguese. Is that not very many people speak English. I mean, it depends where you are, but like I spent some time in Colombia as well, and I mean, like 5% of the population speaks English there, and so. If you want to talk to only 5% of the population, then you don't need Spanish. But if you want to talk to everyone else, you definitely need to learn it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's I think it's so important to generally, when you travel somewhere, to be able to speak a few words in order to negotiate a little bit, because otherwise, of course, you're gonna get ripped. Which is to a certain extent okay, and you're expecting that maybe. Or at least I am now, but to just ask the way, to negotiate with a taxi driver or with, I don't know, like a food stand or something, and maybe to, if you see a beautiful lady, that you can say hola, at least, I don't know,
Sure.
whatever you want to use it for. It's always cool to at least speak 20 words or something, or 50 if you go to any country. It helps a lot. And also, it opens the connection to the people. Because if you can't just say anything, then you can also not, like, you really win the people over when you can speak at least a tiny, 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 tiny bit. And then also, it's more easier for anyone else to help you and to, figure something out if you need something. So.
And so how was your Portuguese now? Like your first trip was 7 years ago? You said 2018?
Yeah, so now my Portuguese, I mean, I had to learn Portuguese kind of also fast, because I wanted to, to be quite honest, so I wanted to get a residency visa in Brazil soon, and and there are several ways to do it. You can either, of course, make a baby, marry, or you can invest in real estate, for example, or in a company, or you can also, have an like employer who employs you there for several years, and then whatever, or retirement visa. So everything of like all of that was not suitable for me, despite the investment visa. So my idea was to invest in Brazilian real estate, especially in Rio de Janeiro, because I know the city very well, and I love it there. And in order to do that, you need to, in my case, I needed to visit a bunch of apartments and learn about the market itself, and talk to lawyers and talk to realtors, and understand all the paperwork. So all of this, of course, just possible if you speak Portuguese. So I just basically forced myself to learn it on the spot, in order to make my idea come to life, to get a residency visa there, and also to start a business there, and to live in Brazil at least.
Would have been easier just to have a baby. No language required.
Listen, it would have been so much easier. But then also the yeah, dude, the responsibility which comes with that. I guess
Yeah, of course.
I was rather prepared to take on Portuguese instead on taking a
Yeah.
baby.
So do you have the residency now?
Not yet, but I'm just about to. It's in process, and I'm gonna get it very soon.
Yeah, I saw that you bought a house in Rio. That was your newest YouTube video, right?
Yes.
And that's a part of the like investing in the country that would count towards that.
Yes, absolutely. So in this case, it's private real estate. That's how it's called, and you have to invest a certain amount of money, a certain minimum amount, in order to then apply for the residency. So to be straightforward, the investment I did was not enough for the threshold of this minimum amount. So I'm gonna do another investment soon, and then the threshold is met, and then I like the application is kind of on hold as long as the threshold is not full, let's say.
Since 2018, like since your very first trip to Brazil, what's the longest that you've been there at one time?
I mean, the longest. So officially, you can just say 90 days. So basically 3 months. But I think I spent like 4.5 months was the longest in a row which I spent there, and then I had to afterwards pay a fine of I don't know even how much it was, and because I overextended my my visa.
Now, is that 90 days per year or per trip?
Per trip.
So like you could just go to Colombia, for example, for a day and then come back, or no?
No, you cannot do the visa run, which many countries in Southeast Asia have. But usually in Latin America, as much as I know is, and for Brazil, I certainly know it, is that you have kind of December and June is kind of the reset date. And then, so if, yeah, it's not 100% certain. No one knows it 100%. Also, no one can tell you. But basically, until 15th of June, it will automatically renew. But then also the amount of days count when you left the country and when you re-enter it.
Okay.
And then also maybe some other rules. To be super honest, I didn't understand it 100% because they're also pretty relaxed with everything, which I personally also love so much about Brazil. But still, the rule applies.
Okay. So that makes sense that you want to get the residency. That would make your life so much easier than going back and forth all the time and trying to figure out the dates. When is it? When am I eligible to get 90 more days? It sounds like kind of a headache.
Yeah, no, to be honest, it is a headache, and it was a headache. But it's soon gonna be over, and also the very cool thing is that Brazil is like the biggest economy in Latin America, and it's part of the BRICS. I don't know how politically or global politically involved you are.
I don't know that. I've never
Which
heard
is
of it.
so no problem. The BRICS is basically the counterpart to the Western world, let's say, and to the dollar.
Okay.
And so it's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and there are other countries joining, and they are kind of their own, let's say, community or party or however you want to call it, to the Western world, Western society, Western currencies and stuff. So also in order to, this world is changing very fast and very, very crazy times right now. And also in order to maybe just have a second option. Also for me personally, Brazil ticked all the boxes in order to, also have a company there, and being able to have a bank account, run a bank account, and also to just diversify everything, let's say. That was definitely one reason why I also chose Brazil, and of course because the city of Rio de Janeiro is just absolutely gorgeous. Have you been there?
I haven't. No, the only place in South America that I've been is Colombia. I've never been to another country there.
Yeah,
I
Colombia.
was I was shocked at like the size of Brazil. Like obviously it looks big on the map, but even population wise, like the first episode of this podcast that I did was with, I think it was the first one, was with a guy named Anderson Diaz, who was the first Brazilian to travel to every country in the world. And he was telling me about the strength of the Brazilian passport for one thing, and also how the population is like 280 million. Is that right? 280 million, something like that?
I think it's a little bit less, rather 220, 230, but however, yeah.
Okay. But it's like, I mean, that's getting almost up there with like the US population. And I was like, I did not realize that there were so many Brazilians in the world. Like, that's huge. Like,
Yeah, dude,
Canada's got 40 million people.
no, it's really massive, and also it's half of the land mass approximately of No, I don't know if it's Latino America, but at least South America. I'm sure of that. Maybe even Latino America, and also half of the population. Um, Definitely not counting in Mexico, because Mexico has a lot of people and a lot of landmass as well. So, anyways, that's rather North America. However, Brazil is basically half of the entire South American continent, which is insane. I mean, it's massive, and also population wise. So I'm also pretty stoked by that all the time. It's really crazy. Yeah.
So when you first got there, like was there quite a bit of culture shock, or traveling to other countries in Latin America kind of got you used to what the vibe was going to be like? Like, was it a shock?
Yeah, I suppose. It's I think in many different ways, because definitely I think generally about Latino America, it's has a very unsafe reputation. Maybe it's getting better now, but still, and especially Brazil as well, and especially Rio de Janeiro. It's supposed to be, yeah, not safe, and also kind of, yeah, maybe rough and third world country ish. I get it a lot, but apparently it's not at all. I mean, of course, there are also more developed parts of Brazil and less developed parts, like in most countries. Even in Germany, Eastern Germany is ways more poor than the rest of Germany, and also not so developed because they were occupied by the Russians. And after the wall fell in 89, it caught up, but still not as much as the rest of Germany. So, however, there is the same also in Brazil. So, in speaking of cultural shock, I mean, I'm often shocked how advanced Brazil is, and even how more advanced Brazil is compared to my own country, Germany. They are so far ahead in many, let's say, IT sectors, and the public transport works so incredibly well. It's always on time, or usually, maybe not always, but most of the times it's very punctual. And then they have their own airlines which operate everywhere in Brazil. It's very well connected, I have the feeling. And then also, like, that really got me. And also how kind of how the business side of things work there as well, which I'm not too deep into yet, but it's pretty easy to start a company, and they have different programs also for foreigners, to invest there, to start companies, to do business there, which is very, for me, very new in Latin American countries, that they're so open also for that, let's say, for that sector. And then generally, I guess the Brazilian people is the best culture shock, because, like, in a very good way, because they're just so incredibly cool, and Brazil has such a strong culture, and they're also so proud of their culture and so identified with it. At least that's how it appears to me. And even though they're such an immense country with so many different federal states, and so many cultures combined, let's say, that but they still kind of manage it and hold it together. And it's like it's really different. Like in the southern parts of Brazil, people are rather looking like me, kind of blonde, tall-ish, European looking. And then you have Rio is pretty mixed. The state of Rio and the city of Rio is pretty mixed, kind of black, white, Indian, whatever, everything. And then in Bahia, Salvador de Bahia, for example, is basically just black, like maybe 95% black. And it's like when I went the first time to Salvador de Bahia, I didn't know nothing. I just booked a flight and I didn't even book any accommodation. It was also in 2018. It was just before the carnival. And listen, I arrived in Salvador and I was like, boom, this is crazy. Like this looks like West Africa right away, but still Brazil, of course. And it's so different. And then when you go to the Amazon, it's again another world. Has nothing to do with anything else I've ever seen anywhere, however, but definitely also not Brazil. And it's so diverse, and so different, but still also just kind of one country with one culture. It's really beautiful. And then there are many, let's say, small small cultural shocks. Like, you want to hear a funny one?
Yeah.
So, for example, this is my absolute favorite. So when you're at the beach, in any Brazilian beach, because it's all over Brazil the same. So suddenly you hear everyone clapping, like everywhere around you. And then you're like, Jesus, why is everyone applauding? Like, what's up? And then I asked the friend I was there with, and then she was like, yeah, it's because someone just lost their baby or their child, or the child cannot find its mother. Like it works both. Well, it just works actually when the child is lost and is looking for the mother. Yeah, so this is how it works. So then everyone is applauding and clapping, and then every mom or whoever is at the beach, probably moms, is checking their children, and then the one who's missing one raises their hand, and then it gets carried or led to the mom, like the child who lost her mom, which is absolutely
It's a good system.
it's it's absolutely amazing. I mean, I've never seen it anywhere. And it happens. So when you spend one day at the beach, let's say 5 hours, 8 hours, whatever, Brazilians can stay at the beach forever, it will happen for sure.
So they need the system, is what you're saying.
Yes, but it's just, yeah, it's just they take care of themselves in their own way. I've never seen it anywhere before.
It takes a lot of participation. Everybody has to know what's going on and be involved in that. Okay, we're clapping. So what, you just hear someone clap and then you start clapping too? That's how it works? Everyone joins in?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no. I was definitely helping. I clapped, of course. Anyone
so
can
then,
help.
Like if the person that's looking for their kid, like if this happens every time you go to the beach, I'm going to guess that they're a little bit more loosey-goosey with where their kids are. They're not helicopter parents that are like following the kids around. They're letting them have some freedom. And so if your kid goes missing and you put your hand up, everyone's clapping, and then you put your hand up and you go, hey, my kid's gone. Is that person chill, or are they like panicked? Is it normal for them? They're chill, yeah.
Chill, absolutely. I mean, let's say usually it's chill. Of course, there are maybe also helicopter parents like everywhere in the world, but generally, pretty chill.
They're like, again, another time, send them over.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, the thing is also, the beaches can get very crowded and kind of not messy in the sense that it's however super dangerous or whatever, but just messy in the sense of too many people, too many kids, and lost orientation.
That's funny.
Yeah,
I think it's really interesting what you were saying about diversity in Brazil, because that's something that I noticed in Colombia too. Like, I think that in Canada, or maybe in North America versus Latin America, we have a different definition of what diversity is because of our demographics. Like in Canada, and I guess in Germany as well, diverse normally means people from other countries, right? We have a diverse population in that we have people from all over the world that come here. But when you go to, like when I was in Colombia, I mean, they have very little immigration. Like it's most everyone is Colombian. Like in more of the international hubs, Medellin, Bogota, you're gonna find more kind of immigrants there. But like where I was living in Ibagué, it's like 100% Colombian. And so for me, I thought, oh, this is not a very diverse place. Like this is just, everyone is just the same. But then you move from one region to another, you go to the coast, and it's all people of African descent. So like you said, everyone's black. They have a very different accent in Spanish than they do, like let's say in Bogota. They have a lot of indigenous people as well. And so there is a ton of diversity there, but they are under the same banner of Colombian. Like everyone is Colombian, but diverse within that category. And so I kind of had to change what my definition of diversity was, because we don't have that to the same extent here in Canada. It's more international. We have indigenous people as well, but like the vast majority of quote unquote Canadians just look like me, right?
Yeah, no, I get that. But are you from the French part of Canada or the English part?
The English part, Western Canada. Mm-hmm.
Is it a big difference between Eastern and Western Canada and French and English speaking part?
Yeah, it's very, like culturally, it's very different. I've been to Quebec. That's like the main French cultural hub in Canada.
Yeah.
I've been there twice, I think. And it feels like Europe more than it feels like Canada. Like it's old architecture. That's where development, like that's where colonialism started in Canada, right? Was on the east. And so there's a lot more like European churches and architecture and cobbled streets and a lot of historical landmarks, you know, like the Plains of Abraham, I think it's called, where the British and the French fought over Canada and who would have control over Canada. Yeah, it's very historical. It feels very old. And then, of course, the language plays a role in that, where everybody is speaking French. And it's unusual for me because we're so far removed from that in the West that when I'm there and sometimes there's a language barrier, it's like, this is weird. Like we're both Canadian, but we can't communicate with each other. It's cool, but it's very, very different. And I think Brazil has that kind of cultural identity as well, because the language plays such a big part in your cultural identity. And all of Latin America, more or less, is Spanish, right? And so Ecuador, Colombia, Peru, those are all unique countries in their own right, but they also share a culture through the language. And in Brazil, they're kind of on their own. Like they're the only ones speaking Portuguese. And so I think that also creates a bit of cultural closeness, where they kind of are their own unit. You know, it's the Portuguese and then it's the Spanish. There's like a line between them, right?
Yeah, no, I totally get it, and I agree. But also, I think that, at least in my experience and how I perceive the Brazilians, they're really, really extremely peaceful and good-hearted. Also, I mean, the women, anyways, of course, but also the guys there. They're not. They're. I mean, I have been in some sketchy situations. Of course, when you spend a lot of time in South America, especially when you also film a lot or take photos or have your camera out and stuff, and you're kind of not just in 5-star resorts and, let's say, these bubbles, then you will encounter some kind of someone tries to pickpocket you or talk to you in a certain way or scam you maybe a little bit. It's just gonna happen, like everywhere probably. If you're in Paris or Barcelona or Rome, it's also gonna happen. However, in South America, definitely as well. And over and all, I also had some sketchy situations in Brazil, but for the time I spent there and for the places I went to and for all the things I did, I think it's basically nothing happened to me so far. And people are just very, very peaceful and not so. They don't want to fuck you up in any way, in my opinion. And in other countries, also in Colombia, especially, and in Peru, I had the feeling that they give not too much about you if you're a foreigner or if you're from wherever. They just, I wouldn't say more violent because I think that would be wrong, but at least that's how it felt to me, that there was more the chance that really I don't know, something really sketchy could happen. And in Brazil, I never really had that feeling so far, because the people are so much more, or are more approachable. At least for me personally, you can always find a good connection to a Brazilian in a certain way. And yeah, I really like that also about Brazil a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, because Brazil, I mean, every country in South America has a bit of a reputation internationally, right?
Yes.
Where it's like, oh, it's dangerous, you'll get kidnapped, or, drug trafficking, that's a big thing. And yeah, when you get there, you realize that that's obviously not the whole story. Like, the countries have so much more than whatever's going on in the government, or whatever's going on in illegal groups, right? The people are just people like anybody else. I think that I do have some like unjustified judgments with Brazil, because I've never been there, right? So I don't know it. But I remember in university a few years ago, I took a class. It was Latin American Studies. And the professor, his main focus was on Brazil. That's where he did a lot of his research. And so he talked about Brazil all the time in the class, and he really liked it. And I remember he said one time that there was this app that you could download, I think it was in Rio, that would tell you where the shootings were for that day, so you could plan your commute, and how like schools had like bulletproof windows and things like that. And then I think in that moment I was like, oh, that's crazy. Like, I don't want to go there. Like that's insane, and so I think that that's always kind of stuck with me in the back of my mind, that like, I had no problem going to Colombia, and that has a bit of a reputation internationally as well, and I was totally happy there. But then I still have that judgment in my mind that's like, yeah, but Brazil is where they're gonna mess you up. That's the dangerous spot, But obviously, your experience is not that way at all, and so it is kind of like a preconceived notion, I guess, that I have.
I mean, think about Medellin in Colombia, for example, in the 80s and 90s, when Pablo Escobar was still a big deal, kind of. Very, very bad. I think maybe also the movie City of God, for example. I don't know if you saw it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in Portuguese, that's Cidade de Deus, and it's a favela, like a slum. Very, I don't know, like not too far from Copacabana, where I live, maybe 1 hour driving. And it exists, absolutely. And maybe also through, reputation or media or movies like this, it gets this reputation. But of course, there's also some truth to that, of course. But it also can change, like Medellin now. Medellin made a lot of efforts, and they took a lot of measures to become a safe and good city for which appeals to foreigners, right? And now Medellin is absolutely awesome, and you don't feel anything anymore about this of this time 20, 30 years ago. Or rather 40 years ago even. And in Brazil, maybe there was a time where it was crazy rough, but however, I feel like nowadays, at least since I'm there, it's like any other country too, and it's definitely not that big time dangerous and kind of third world vibe country, not at all. But of course, it's also so different if you grow up in Brazil and maybe in let's just stick to Rio, because Brazil is so massive and I know Rio very well. Also the more poor parts, and also I went to many favelas there and I saw a lot of stuff happening there already. So of course in Rio there's also very poor neighborhoods, and very like drug is a big issue, and as more drugs are involved, as unsafer it gets as well, because people get crazy, and that definitely exists there. And there are also parts of Rio where you don't stop your car at a red traffic light after 5 o'clock in the evening, because the chance that someone is gonna rip the door open or stuff is so high that you just continue driving, which always surprises me. And when I drive in these neighborhoods, I also do it, and it always feels weird because I'm still very German, and I stop at a red traffic light, of course, especially with the car. However, I go with the flow. Of course, it's important, and this is very different. For example, I suppose when you grow up there and experience that daily, and kind of have to, then it maybe gets really annoying and is a different level. However, it's not everywhere like that, but there are parts of Rio which are still like that, I suppose, where I definitely don't want to live in, of course. But however, that's just one part of the story, and I don't want to deny that. I think that's definitely still present. But over and all, if you don't are in these specific neighborhoods, it's absolutely beautiful, and I would say pretty safe as well. And there's another thing which is very talking about violence, because it's always such a big issue for everyone who comes to Brazil, I think, or at least it is an issue. I don't know if it's a big one. My ex-girlfriend is actually also Brazilian, and a very lovely lady, and she went to the States a lot, and she told me once one very interesting thing she noticed, because we were talking about violence and this and that, and then one of her friend's kids, who also lives in the States, didn't go to school because there was a school shooting. It was 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, in Texas. And then my former girlfriend was like, you know what? I don't understand that. I'm a Brazilian, and here we have violence because we need money, or we need food, or we need money for food. It's very easy. And so you can kind of calculate with it. It makes sense. And there in the States, someone is just nuts in the head and shoots a bunch of people, children, teachers, whatever. But there's no reason behind this violence. So it's also not predictable, and it's kind of random. And she's like, I don't get that, because this is such a insane violence which has no point. And then I never thought about that violence actually has a point, or could have one, in terms of, I need food on the table, I don't have a job, and I'm maybe, I don't know to read, I don't know how to write, so what do? I will rob someone. But that's it, and not harm someone. And this is something it really stuck with me, because I never thought like that. But she was kind of, let's say, used to violence, because she also grew up in a not so pleasant neighborhood, and the social standard was not the highest, let's say. So she had that around her all the time when she was a child and a teenager, but learned to deal with it. But again, it always had a purpose, kind of.
They're gaining something from it. It's not just for fun. Like, they're actually
Yes.
gaining something from it. Yeah, it's like the more you look into crime, I think, and violence, the more you can understand it. It's never excusable. It's never like, oh, well, of course, yeah, do that. I mean, if you don't have any money, of course, yeah, go ahead. It's never excusable. It's always a wrong thing to do, because it damages society. But if you look into it more through the lens of poverty, it makes more sense. You can have like more empathy for people that find themselves in those situations, I guess.
Yeah. And also, you don't need to worry too much about getting hurt, as long as you do whatever is demanded,
Yeah. I think that like the more that I've traveled in, especially in Colombia, the more that I've realized this question of, is it safe in XYZ country, wherever it might be, is not a yes or no question. It's nuanced, it's contextual, right? It's like, is it safe there? What do you mean? Like, where are you living, right? Like, what city are you in? What neighborhood of that city? Who are you hanging out with? I don't know. There's a lot of, it brings up more questions than it answers sometimes, I think. But
yeah, no, I totally agree. And I have the philosophy now that it's anyways also everyone's own fault, basically, if they get marked or robbed or somehow, because they didn't apply the rules. And the rules is simple: just Basically, don't wear super fancy jewelry. Nope. Um, and then maybe also don't run around with your cell phone out talking to someone or shooting whatever video or something. And don't get super drunk. Nope, don't do it. And don't accept any drinks from strangers where there's maybe like a tranquilizer or anything inside. And if you basically do these 4 things, it's very unlikely that you have a sticky situation anywhere.
Yeah, anywhere in the world for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it applies probably everywhere. And then that's it. And then you're just good to go. But again, generally, I think Brazil very safe. Rio also very safe. At least in all the touristic and let's say normal parts of town and not the super bad ones. It's absolutely safe there. Yeah.
So you kind of have 2 hubs, right? You live in Rio and you live in Munich. What would you say the biggest differences are in terms of your day-to-day life in both cities?
I think, well, the biggest difference for me at least is of course that in Rio I have the sea and the beach, and I can go surfing, and I don't know, having a beach right next to your apartment or to your front door is very weird to me. Um, it's very very strange. It's crazy cool, and of course, I mean, Germany is generally a little bit quicker, and everyone is a little bit more work focused, versus in Rio, not exactly. There's definitely also a big beach focus. I can tell you that, and it's a little bit more laid back. And yeah, I mean, it always also depends what you do. So for me personally, it's just ways more sun. I appreciate the food more, and it's more outdoors. That's also the thing I love most about Rio specifically, that you have the mountains, the sea, and the big city all in one spot. Um, but Munich also is very beautiful and very like has the English Garden, which is a very huge, massive park, and you have like a river flowing, like 2 rivers flowing through Munich, which you can also jump in, and it's rather for summer. So Munich for summer, and Rio also for summer. So I skipped the winter.
So do you feel like you're going to keep going back and forth between Germany and Brazil even when you get your residency in Brazil?
Nope, not too much anymore. The thing is, also due to my job, so I make movies and shoot photos. That's basically what I do. So due to my job, I also travel a lot generally. So I'm not too long at one specific place. Or if I am, then I leave that place and come back to the place, however. But I wanna really make Rio my home, like my how do you say that? My
Your home
base.
base.
Yeah, home base, exactly. And Munich more for family and maybe once in a while a job or something. But yeah, I really wanna live in Rio and establish myself there. I see a lot of opportunities there, at least for me personally, which I wanna explore more. Yeah.
To bring it back to the language, you said that you learned Spanish before you went to Brazil, right? Because you were traveling in other Latin American countries.
Yes.
And then being in Brazil, obviously, you got to learn Portuguese. How did those 2 experiences compare? Learning Portuguese versus learning Spanish?
So the thing is, I mean, I knew Spanish before I knew Portuguese. So I had to learn Spanish from scratch, and Portuguese not really, because I knew Spanish already, and it's quite similar.
But you did speak French before you learned Spanish, right?
Yes.
So that probably helped as well.
Also, yeah, absolutely. But not as much as Spanish and Portuguese helps. So for me, Portuguese is very similar to Spanish until it's not at all similar, until it has nothing to do with each other. So, for example, dog in Spanish is perro, and in Portuguese it's cachorro. It has nothing to do with each other. But in most cases, it's just the same. And also how you use future or past tense, it's the same in how you do the cases and conjugate different verbs, whatever,
The
and how you
tenses.
structure the sentence. It's also pretty much the same. And now, okay, Portuguese is already kicking in. So to learn it, if you already know Spanish, it's kind of, you just need to switch your brain into a different pronunciation, of course, and a little bit maybe different rhythm, because it has definitely a totally different rhythm, but it's very similar. And also the way to not get confused all the time between Spanish and Portuguese, I had the brilliant idea to learn Portuguese in Spanish instead of German. So
Ah.
because I bought one book which is called Portuguese for Dummies, and I read the entire book and wrote some things down and whatever. So I prepared a tiny little bit to just have an overall idea, and then I went from there. But I bought this book in Spanish and not in German, and that helped a lot to not get confused,
Mhm.
at least for
I would
me.
have I would have thought that would be the opposite. That learning it in Spanish would even create more associations between the two languages. But no, it was the opposite.
At least in my brain, it didn't.
Okay.
It really helped a lot, yeah, to not get confused all the time. And then it's, I mean, I personally learn very well with music, and then studying the lyrics. I don't know, that helps for me. And then, of course, speaking to as many people as I can. And I don't learn too much with writing or studying a book or watching TV is not working at all. I cannot watch and learn. I can just hear and learn. So that's the how it worked for me the best way. But it is pretty similar until to the point where it's super different over and all. Yeah.
I've heard a lot of people compare Spanish and Portuguese and say that Portuguese has a much more complex phonetic system. Like there are more sounds. They have the nasal sounds. I think they have more vowel sounds as well. Like Spanish pretty much just sticks to 5 vowel sounds that don't change. And the way that I understand it in Portuguese, it's not quite as straightforward. Has that been hard to learn, the pronunciation?
Yes, that's actually a little bit tough, and it's still a little bit tough because of these sounds. You're absolutely right, and also these sounds, like French as well, which has also these very magnifique sounds. The writing is difficult and kind of, let's say, yeah, it's different and therefore more difficult, because in Spanish you write everything pretty much exactly how you speak it and pronounce it, so it's very easy. And in Portuguese, I mean, as well, but you pronounce it weirdly because you have more vowels and sounds. So the writing is more difficult. At least in my opinion, it's more difficult than the Spanish one, and it reminds me a little bit of French as well, because there's like these double S and then suddenly an A and a H somewhere where you don't expect it, and then you have also these I don't even know how this is called, like the CCD, like the wave above the A, and then the hook under the C. Since I never studied Portuguese in school, I don't I don't know exactly how all of this is called. I just write it, of course, and speak it, but my grammar knowledge is not the best, to be honest.
How many languages do you speak in total then?
Well, I mean, fluently 4. And my French is a little bit rusty, to be honest. It's so 4.5.
4.5. So that would be English, Spanish, Portuguese, German, and half of French.
You got it. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
impressive. That's a lot of languages.
Yeah, I mean, I I really like it. I think speaking another language or a new language, whatever language it is, it opens a new culture and a new world for you to explore. And that's so beautiful, and it's such a motivation to learn a language for me, because it opens the world for you. because you can talk to the people there, you can connect, you can hear stories, you can tell stories, and I think it's very beautiful to experience that, at least if you're into it, of course.
I agree 100%. Hey, Michy, this has been really fun, man. I appreciate this. This is a good chat.
Yeah, likewise. How many languages do you speak, by the way?
I would say I speak, what is it? English, Tagalog, Spanish. Those are the main three. And then I speak German, but it's rusty. So I would say 3.5. My German is your French. It's the half one.
Yeah, you got it, man. And what exactly is Tagalog, by the way?
Tagalog is Filipino.
It's
It's one of the main languages, one of the official languages of the Philippines. So on my other channel, I make mostly Filipino content, like for a Filipino audience, more or less. And so I use that language all the time, for my videos. And it's the one that I've also spoken the longest. Like I started learning that nearly 10 years ago. So it's been a long, long while. And then Spanish, because my girlfriend is Colombian and we live together and we speak Spanish 80 or 90% of the time every day. So I use Spanish every day. And then German, my family's originally from Germany, like a long time ago, but it's, my last name is Hartmann, right? Like it's
definitely
pretty deep in my family roots. And so I wanted to kind of reconnect with that. So I learned that on my own. I took some classes at university and then I did an exchange in Germany as well. So
cool.
Yeah,
cool,
that's kind
cool.
of the
and how
history.
come that you learned Tagalog 10 years ago, or that you started?
I had a girlfriend from the Philippines. Yeah. So I learned for her.
You got it, man. Best, absolutely. I mean, at least one of the best ways to get into a new language as well is, of course, with a date.
All you need is motivation to learn. And
Exactly.
What better motivation than, going out with someone from that country, right? So why not?
Yeah, I'm definitely also guilty on that one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sweet. Well, let's leave it here for now. And, maybe in the future we could do another call. This was really fun. But before you go, tell people how they can find you online and watch your content and stuff like that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you so much. It was absolutely great chat. And so I'm basically on any social platform, Michy Herzog, which is like MICHYHERZOG. And you can look it up if you want. And follow along.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said at the beginning, I think your content is like super underrated. It's amazing. It's really good. And so, yeah, people should definitely go and check it out. Okay, sweet. Thanks, Michy. I appreciate this. Have a good one, man. I'll talk to you later.
Likewise. Thank you, mate. Bye.
Okay, bye.